All righty. It looks like it's time for that time during the week where we get to catch up on what's happening with the City Council, City Haps, and this is James Moore. You're listening to solar-powered KRUU-FM, broadcasting from the Cultural District here in Fairfield, Iowa. On it was a decidedly sunny day. It's getting a little bit overcast, a little bit nippy. We're going from 85 to snow. It must be Iowa. At any rate, thank you so much for tuning in. Also, streaming online at KRUU-FM.com. We bring you city business after each City Council session, and we'll do that the following lunchtime, 12:30, then Thursday dinner time at 6:30 p.m., followed by the Monday 6:30 a.m. breakfast time. We've been alternating city business and state business with Representative Kurt Hansen. Nice way to keep in the flow, and we're hoping to get the county supervisors braided into this platform so everyone can stay abreast of what's going on, different spheres, you know. And speaking of different spheres, we will talk about something that happened, that I think reflects on the county and a bunch of concerned citizens. You heard the interview last week with Roger Leahy, Clyde Cleveland, and Keith DeBoer. We are going to be inviting Heartland and Reef, as well as a supervisor, to come on and talk about their perspective. But today we have City Councilman Michael Halley from the 4th Ward, and we're going to get a recap on a very long and busy night. Michael, how you doing today?
I'm good. Glad to be here as always.
Good to see you.
All right, this is a review of our regular council meeting for April 14th, 2014. Before we jump into the Heartland Co-op issue, we did hear from Nancy Morrissey's, the Chamber of Commerce director, just requesting to use a city parking lot for the citywide garage sale. That will be on, one moment please, May 17th and September 20th this year.
Twice a year, right?
Yep. All right, jumping right in, we heard from Paul Glossop and a handful of others, as well as Marcia Hansen, speaking concerns about the Heartland Co-op
and
grain elevator project.
Maybe we should just, in case people haven't heard about it, I know
Sure.
a lot have, let's just sort of set that up a little bit.
Yeah, so it's a project that is proposed to be built about a mile east of city limits. I guess it's north of Overland Sheepskin's property.
Mm-hmm. Very close there.
Yeah, it's by the railroad tracks. The idea is large grain elevators that would be able to take in the grain from the farmers in this region, 6-county region in southeast Iowa. And they would have a spur line similar to Performance Pipe as a spur line on the west end of city limits at 23rd Street.
And what does that mean? That
it's an extra track that comes off the main 2 tracks. There's an east-west line for BNSF,
for loading or whatever.
For loading, unloading cars. And so Performance Pipe uses it, I can't remember how many times a week, but usually at night, and it's pretty quick getting on and off, and no one really notices. So they would do that. That's the part of this proposed project would include rail. So there's some concerns. Obviously, the property owners in the area are concerned because having a large grain elevator like that would be a visual impact, potentially noise impact with the grain drying that takes place after harvest, potential dust from just the trucks coming in, maybe grain dust, noise, I guess mentioned that. So, basically concerned that the environment would be affected and the quality of life would be affected.
Even the entrance, the type of entrance from that part of town, of course, Overland out there many years. And as we heard, I want to just set this up by asking, Michael, I know the idea was to bring this to the city and there were some recommendations. This really is county jurisdiction, and that's something the mayor made kind of clear off the bat. I mean, obviously, Jefferson County includes Fairfield. So, but could you address that a little bit?
Yeah. We had our city attorney, John Morrissey, speak on this last night.
But John, would you also explain the other zoning authority that we would have within a 2-mile radius and how we would accomplish that?
Right. County subdivision rules and city subdivision rules are a separate entity from city zoning and county zoning. And it's separate in the extent that county zoning or city zoning regulates use versus things like infrastructure, streets, lighting, and things that you would expect to go along, be the amenities of an annexed development. The regulation of the use, however, depends entirely on how areas that you have jurisdiction over are intended for use. For instance, residential, commercial and business, manufacturing, agricultural, those are all zone characteristics of land use that we can have under a city ordinance as well as a county ordinance. What the mayor's talking about, though, is the fact that we've used a extraterritorial subdivision review process that complements the county for a number of years and also helps us look at things that we might annex sometime, is a different ballgame from extraterritorial zoning. I've had the honor of being the city attorney since 1990. In 1995 and 96, I was also the county attorney. And back then, we had 1,000 people over at the high school show up and tell us they didn't want county zoning. I was one of the presenters, along with a man named Gary Bishop, who was our county engineer, that laid out a 3-year booklet that was a county zoning ordinance that had been drafted by 10 county zoning commission members, plus a couple members of the Board of Supervisors, county engineer, and they had input from other local engineers and other attorneys, members of the bar, and myself as county attorney. I also happen to be Fairfield city attorney. At that time, the county zoning proposals, which might well have been your answer, were soundly defeated. The Board of Supervisors disbanded the County Zoning Commission. 2 of the 3 Board of Supervisors that were part of the group that helped orchestrate the ordinance were voted out of office. As far as the future of county zoning in this county, it's been one of those taboo words since that time. And it was a coalition of out of city and Farm Bureau and people that were very independent about their beliefs and the independent right to use their lands the way they wanted to, that defeated that county zoning process. A year later, 1997, it came back. There's a provision in the state code that says that when a county declines to act in the realm of county zoning, that if a city feels its interests on its, what we call, well, it's the extraterritorial zoning area that the mayor's mentioned, when a city feels that that area needs to be regulated to some extent, it can look at extraterritorial zoning in the 2-mile or less area surrounding its boundaries. And this, the statute calls it an urbanized area. It's defined by what's out there that hasn't already been spoken for. And one of the things we found in 1997, because I worked with the council and we spent about 6 months on this, we had hearings in here. We had so many people show up in opposition to it that literally all these council chairs were stacked with bumper-to-bumper people. The whole room was full of people in here. Everybody wanted to hear what was going on, and they got a chance to hear. But what happened at that time was we looked at our, again, our urbanized area. What we found was, and it's still on the books, there is a part of the statutes that allows a farmer or a group of farmers to combine land totaling 300 acres, and they can have what they call an agricultural area. And you'll find if you look at our urbanized area and the boundaries that surround the city of Fairfield, that we don't really have 2 miles. A lot of places maybe we only have a half mile. Then we have other places where we share an urbanized area with Vedic City up to the northwest. And so there are places where this is a half mile wide, there's places where this is a mile wide, and there's places where this is 2 miles wide. So that's what we're talking about. It's irregular, and you can't necessarily project that you're going to be talking about 2 miles when you try to regulate this. But we looked at that back then. We had our hearings. The county partially adopted that, the city partially adopted that ordinance. There's parts of it that have never been adopted yet. It was politically unpopular then. It was a situation where you had to appoint commissioners that lived in the urbanized area to add to the extraterritorial zoning commission, and then they had to meet with the in-town members of the commission and organized to have a new extraterritorial zoning map established and then published. So there's some steps that have never happened. The ordinance itself has never been published. The map has never been done. The commissioners have never been appointed. And things that you would expect to do as far as notice to surrounding people in the area and so forth have not happened. We're talking about something that happened 17 years ago. That's still a state of affairs for the city of Fairfield as far as this urbanized area. There isn't any ordinance that you can come ask us to enforce right now. We respect your right to petition. We understand what your petition says, but we don't have an ordinance that we can do anything about. To take up an ordinance again, we've got to go back, fill in 17 years, figure out what is good and bad about that. We don't know that there won't be the same kind of opposition to an ordinance. You folks are here on behalf of environment, on behalf of interests that have to do with a specific project. But you don't know what else is out there that may be in opposition to the whole concept of this type of zoning regulation. We encountered that in our last experience in considering this kind of legislation for a period of months, several council meetings, and it never finished the process. So that's what I'm telling you first, is the status of extraterritorial zoning. There isn't an ordinance for extraterritorial zoning right now in the city of Fairfield or its ordinance book. Parts of this also that you need to understand is, even if we had one on the books, we can be trumped at any time, according to the state statute, by the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors. The county holds basically all the game balls on this as far as what can ultimately come into this urbanized 2 mile area. If the county wants to opt to exercise some kind of special land use regulation in that areas, they can do it by calling it a specialized limited form of county zoning. And there were discussions about that back in 1997, that maybe that would be what happened next. However, the newly elected Board of Supervisors at that time weren't going anywhere near the Z word. It was not a word that they would consider. There were full-page ads in the paper about how important it was to defeat anything. If it quacked like a duck, if it walked like a duck, you can count on John Morrissey being a duck, I guess is what they amounted to back then. My middle name was Z. It was John Z. Morrissey for years. And I make that in jest to somewhat, but seriously, it's a very controversial issue as far as when you talk about land use regulation, whether it's countywide or whether it's a 2 mile strip or whether it's something shorter than that as far as this urbanized area. So if the county looks at your petition right now, they can do something. The county can probably act faster than the city because it's who this developer has gone to. The developer never brought anything to the city. The developer doesn't need to because the city doesn't have anything it can issue. We can't give the developer a permit. We don't have anything we can regulate them with, and essentially it's back in the county's hands on things that the county can do to help them or to hinder them. The county could as easily pass something that would trump us if we do pick up the 2-mile extraterritorial flag. So we have to consider that every step of the way. We try to have a good working relationship with the county. I know the county attorney used to be an associate in my office, good friend. I don't think we have enemies over there on the county side, but the other side of it is this is a political football. This is a hard thing to accomplish any movement towards the Z word. As far as the city side of this, if the city picks up where it left off 17 years ago, there's some voids to be filled. We don't know at this point, or we haven't done a recent study on what the urbanized area around our town even looks like compared to what it looked like in 1997. So that piece of the puzzle, I'm sure it can be done with some engineering help, but it's still a project that won't happen tomorrow. And the process, if it had gone full span back in 1997, would have probably taken 6 to 8 months to get a adopted, published map with a commission acting on the map and a commission then sitting down and drawing zones on the map. That's the regulatory function of a commission once you get that far along. So best case scenario, if the council wanted to go that direction, it's one of their options, would be long term. It's nothing that'll happen tomorrow. And then there's other things that you have to consider that have nothing to do with the fact that I'm telling you about an ordinance and the history of tracking some zoning attempts in the past. There's another thing that comes up under the U.S. Constitution, and that is that when you have something that's already started in the process, you have to deal with a part of our Constitution that's called ex post facto. You don't pass laws about specific things after the fact. They haven't done that since we kicked England out. And basically, when you look at it as a situation about can you do something with your current problem by legislating after the fact, you all know you wouldn't do that out of a sense of fairness. You all know that that's something that the party that you're doing it to would have a perfect right to go into court and have that type of process stopped. So constitutionality is a big concern, and it's a concern as far as the way things time out here too. Yes, sir.
Thank you. There is a law, there used to be a law called first in line, first in time, first in line, in which a city proceeded, for example, if a hog confinement was going to be built after a community was in place and that community would, rejected that it couldn't be built.
Now, there used to be.
There used to be, and it was overturned by Farm Bureau.
Yeah, there's a matrix law now that basically is in the hand of supervisors to an extent and DNR to a greater extent. And essentially, I don't see anybody locating confinement facilities inside city limits.
I just use that as an
example. I understand your example. I just think that getting close to the urbanized areas tends to test the water pretty strongly on those kinds of cases. But the matrices get watched closely. Our JFAN group here in this county is pretty religious about watching the numbers on the matrix and holding the DNR to the ground, so to speak, on that. But
now, there are some things the city can do. Let's say this project does bring increased traffic. We can have weight limits on our city streets that would basically prohibit those large grain trucks from coming through any of the city streets. That would be one thing. If there was a noise issue and we did have some sort of noise ordinance that did extend that far, we could hold Heartland accountable to that if they are interfering with the quality of life within the city. So there are some things that we can do, but we cannot legally stop the project. I don't even know if the supervisors in the county can legally stop the project. The county supervisors are essentially looking at, do we offer any financial incentive. Well, they basically, I think, have taken that mostly off the table. Now they're asking themselves, do we use the tax increment financing? Do we use the property tax revenue this project would bring, borrow off the future revenues, and pave a road? Now, that's a big issue in the county, is condition of roads. So they thought, well, let's go ahead and pave a road that everyone can use. They'll use it as well, but everyone can use and everyone will benefit. But even that's being looked at as an incentive for the project, and those who are opposing it don't want any incentives. So I just listened to an interview Supervisor Becky Schmidt did on our sister station, our neighbor station here in town this morning, and she said the county will make a decision sometime in the coming weeks as to what they're going to do. But I believe that means, are they going to do any paving of roads or not? It's not, are they going to green light or red light the project, because they don't have zoning, so they can't legally stop the project. It's a flip side of things. It's no one wants to be told what to do on their property, but then when someone else is doing something on their property you don't like, you kind of wish that there was authority to say something, but it doesn't work that way. That's a double standard, and we can't have that. So I don't know if this will change people's attitudes about zoning. Maybe this is the project that we couldn't stop, but the one that we learned from, and that we changed our approach because of. Well,
Roger Leahy was there and spoke about even figuring out a way to buy it, even at this very high price that it was. I remember what it sold for way back when, and it's about 10 times that much right now. I don't know if there's any teeth in that. The mayor's saying, well, that would be something you would approach them about. Yeah. The concern there just being that it's not exactly, from his point of view, it's not exactly a farm. It's a more of a factory kind of, 220 foot tall, and different. The mayor actually talked to Heartland, the same man that Roger Leahy had spoken with, and there were different stories, whether it was going to go all night or whether it was going to go this many times. There would be no chemicals. There's nothing. That's a word now. I mean, that could change. There's nothing holding them from not doing that. Again, But we hope to speak with them to see what they have in mind. But and whether there's legal stoppage, right? Whether there's a legal recourse. It's very clear the city has limited, what you explained very clearly, and John Morrissey as well, the city attorney. But it's interesting. It seems like Heartland has talked about wanting to be a good neighbor, and it'll be interesting to me to see how this comes down. I've always been looking at, even in speaking with the different people, is what the levers are. Of course, they have bought the land now, right? And according to Becky Schmitz, they also have been in development with the railroad company for years, and that's why they're attached to that property, because they can accommodate that spur line. And I know from working with the railroad company on the quiet zone, it's a long process. Yes, a long process and difficult. So the idea of moving east to some sounds like the perfect solution, but it may not be so simple. But yeah, you're right. There's, like Mayor Malloy said, if a private group of citizens wants to approach Heartland with a deal to buy their property or whatnot, that's their prerogative. And so essentially it is now between private citizens wanting to deal directly with Heartland and the county supervisors. May I just throw something in? To me, what didn't come up very much is the economic impact of this. It's not really a job. I mean, the most I heard is 8 jobs or 6, and with Reef probably not being able to compete there directly already, according to what's been said. Yeah, loss of number of jobs potentially. And that whether Overland chooses to relocate, which has been talked about. These are different issues, but economic impact-wise, and again, were there studies done on that? Do you know, FIDA and different? The number that's being talked, and I don't know exactly where it came from. So I have to admit that I've been mostly passively watching this thing unfold, because I knew from the beginning the city had no jurisdiction, and was glad that we kind of cleared that up last night. But I'm not an expert in this project by any means. I've just been reading the paper essentially. But the number I keep hearing is that an estimated $1 million could be kept in the local farmers' pockets by having a closer grain elevator that would pay them a good price for their grain. Of course, the money going to this operation, though, go elsewhere because it wouldn't exactly.
Yeah, but that $1 million would be saved by local farmers who are in general basically in favor, because they're currently driving to the river at Burlington.
Gotcha.
There's a place they can take their grain there, and I believe there's one west of Ottumwa. So, we talk about environmental impact. If the drivers were going less distance, then, that's a positive environmental impact, but not one that we would necessarily feel. I think the environmental impact people are talking about is more kind of direct around that area. And
I just think it's an interesting choice for Heartland.
Yeah.
With Fairfield known as an entrepreneurial place, sustainable, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I'm all for farming and it's just an interesting choice is all I can say. I mean, and there were, you think of Cambridge and some of these businesses, that are, and Roger talked about how many hundreds of thousands of dollars that company has put in over all these years. They didn't get breaks. They didn't get some of these, and even talking about how hard it was to get water out there from anywhere.
Yeah.
Some interest, I tell you what, it's interesting when these things come up, and I want to just thank you. We're talking about this because concerned citizens brought it to the city council. Mm-hmm. And again, just to be clear from the city council's point of view, again, there's what you can do and what it means going forward, right? And that it was pretty clear that this jurisdiction, because that was my question too, how can you do this in retrospect if somebody bought the land with something in mind? But I wonder about the bypass, that was coming in how many years, and so that would have been something somebody's been thinking about for some time. But it does seem like it's going to be one of the larger facilities that this 63 different operations around the state.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, again, I don't think Heartland as a co-op has any ill will towards Fairfield. I think that just like any business, they're looking to make money, and they've done their market research and just decided that this would be a good location for a grain elevator. And then they needed to find a place that had good road access and good rail access. And I think that's what ended up dictating where they chose. I've heard people think that there was some intention to build near Fairfield to get back at the anti-GMO group in town. I think that's
I don't know about
a little odd. And here's the thing is, well, I've been through enough of these hot topic issues to see that it is important to approach these, what you hear, with critical thinking, and especially remember that if the information you're being provided is being provided from the opponents of the project, you need to keep in mind it might not be entirely accurate. So an example of that is there was a graphic being shared on social media these last few days that showed a humongous monstrosity, quote unquote, of a grain elevator that dwarfed the Jefferson County courthouse. And then at last night's meeting, the same people put that together, showed a modified version that was volume-wise a quarter of the size. I mean, half the height and less or more than half the width.
It's roughly 3 times taller than the county.
Well, the new one showed it wasn't. So they modified it based on better information. So, if a city official speaks to, I've noticed this as soon as I became a council member, if I need to talk to somebody about something, when you're a city official, you get, I don't want to say it, but you get better information. It's different when someone who is representing government asks a question than just a regular citizen. And so, I trust what Mayor Malloy reported last night. I don't think that it would be intelligent for Heartland to change their story and then build something entirely different than what they're talking about. But I think it's excellent that we're all putting the spotlight on them.
Well, I just have to say on behalf of, you have to watch carefully what opponents say, but I think you also have to look equally carefully at what proponents say.
Of course, yeah.
Because proponents have more of an interest in it because they want to make the business transaction and get as much advantage as they can, TIFs and other things. And large corporations are used to coming in and getting that. So I think they have not presented, Heartland hasn't presented their much, and they haven't been very forthcoming. And so there is confusion about that.
And that's why I think this is
good.
Do
they have to? No, I don't think they legally
not
do.
With the zoning,
until they register with the state. When they start putting in pipelines and so forth, that has to be. But so I think it's like, I think it's a fair process. I just think we're a little late. I wish this would have started a little sooner, personally.
Yeah. Well, it was in the paper last year.
Yep,
and then
in December, I think, in January.
Issued this spring. Just for the record, co-op, they're a member-owned co-op, not a corporation.
Mhm.
I just think it's important to speak in terms of what's real.
Sure.
So I've heard corporation thrown around a lot. They are not a corporation. I've got a lot of other things on the agenda. Can
You bet.
we jump right in?
Absolutely.
All right.
It was a long night, folks.
Yes. I just want to hit these as quickly as I can.
You got it.
We had a thank you from Dave Neff, who just thanked all the city departments and department heads, especially the road crews, for keeping up the streets during such a hard winter. It's just nice to hear a thank you.
He's a great soul and a good man. Great community lighthouse, Dave Neff.
Yep. We're moving forward on the new terminal building at the Fairfield Airport. So I think the construction is going to start this year and hopefully be done early next year, I believe. So if you've been out there, you notice the terminal building is very outdated, and they've expanded the runway since then, and they have a lot more planes. And this is 90% funded federally and 10% locally. So city's not spending that much, but getting a nice new building out there.
Fantastic.
We approved the right-of-way tree removal agreement with Alliant Energy. Their crews will be coming in the next few weeks and taking out only those ash trees that the city public works director has marked. These are city-owned trees, though they are adjacent to properties, and property owners will feel a loss, and we apologize for that. The reason we're going ahead with this now, instead of waiting until the trees are further along, closer to death from their EAB infestation, is because we have a very limited budget for tree removal, and we're looking at hundreds of trees that we'll be having to take down. And so if Alliant Energy is willing to take them, and it's in their advantage to take them out so they're no longer interfering with their power lines, then we're going to go ahead and...
Will the city be letting people know?
Yeah, we're going to send letters to the adjacent property owners explaining if they want to replant themselves, here's where you get a permit, here's the list of trees you can choose from, or wait until fall when we'll be doing replanting in the right-of-way as well.
Gotcha.
And we'll get grant funding for that. Let's see. We readopted the complete streets and land use protection for farmer market and community gardens policies for our blue zone designation. We had done it, but then they had to be done again as policy. Now, it sounds goofy, and I sometimes get a little frustrated with this process myself, but the understanding is that, or the goal is that to make changes that outlive the people who are currently in those positions. So, I remember that being a problem with a friend of mine who started a sustainability club at campus. It's like after he left, I took it over, and then after I left, someone else took it over, and that went on one more person, and then it didn't go. So it went away. So you got to try to, if you're going to try to create change, make it something that will outlive those who are there when the change happens. Authorizing the sale of Logan Apartments. The important thing here is that the city is dictating that whoever purchases that keep it as a HUD property, meaning low income, and they have to maintain that.
And so where is that located?
It's the corner of 4th and Madison, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that property.
For some reason, the city purchased it. I don't know exactly why. It's kind of odd for cities to be in the real estate business, but we've owned it for many years. But if we free up the funds by selling it now, those funds can be used for a variety of other projects.
Fantastic.
We approved our nuisance abatements. That's basically if somebody doesn't mow their grass and the city has to do it, they bill them. And if there's something like still in the books, we had very few this year, so people seem to be staying on top of this stuff more.
Then you send out Guido?
We need a Guido, but we don't have one. We're moving forward on a frontage road. Yeah.
Very funny.
Frontage road. So you know where the new bank is going across from...
Yep.
What's
by
that
the
called?
Hospital?
Yeah.
Jefferson County.
Yeah,
Center,
across from
Health
the hospital. I'm just trying to think of Pilot Grove Savings. That's the name of the bank. We agreed, and this is a city doing a small TIF where we're using the property tax we'll get from that bank to pay back a loan to put a frontage road. So there'll be a nice road that leads to the bank. Now, it'll also hopefully lead at some point to some housing developments to the east of that.
You're doing good, Michael. This is a lot of stuff.
I'm going to rattle this off.
By the way, this is city business, and we also appreciate FMC shooting this for video where it's live and in 3D. We're just 2D on the radio, but go ahead.
All right. We're moving forward on a skate park. Anonymous donor had donated, I think it was $150,000 to build a new skate park that's not a flat surface, but kind of a bowl-shaped curved surface. Yep. Originally, it was going to go the backside of the new property owned west of the existing Roosevelt complex, but instead it's now going to O.B. Nelson Park, which will be a nice fit. Since we're moving, the new pool will be at the Roosevelt site.
So it's like...
So we're kind of doing a switcheroo.
Well, whenever I hear anonymous donor, I think of that mask, but I know that's a different thing. Anyway, moving ahead.
Moving along, we did elect to exercise our jurisdiction over subdivisions for a subdivision within our... We do that from time to time. It was not anything controversial. We extended our moratorium on wireless communication towers for another, through June 30th of 2015. And that's basically something that was put in place years back when a tower came in that wasn't really welcome, and we realized, kind of like this Heartland thing, we don't have any code to stop this. So we put a moratorium, but that's not really the solution. We need a zoning ordinance about cell towers, where they can and can't be placed, which my committee, the Environment Franchise Committee, was asked to look into. So I'll be working on that one at some point. We're participating in a Jefferson County multi-jurisdiction hazard mitigation plan.
Say that again.
I don't want to.
Okay.
As dictated by state law. So,
yeah.
But it's actually, it would be something that the police department would work with the Jefferson County Law Center on. We're moving forward on phase 2 and phase 3 of the new pool.
Yep.
Again, the location has changed, and to fit our budget, after the county said, no thanks, we don't want to contribute. We're like, all right, how much do we have to spend? And we've changed the location to south of the indoor pool. Moving forward, I'm borrowing about $2.5 million for wastewater, both at the plant itself and what's called the conveyance system, which is just the pipes. This is phase 1. We've been talking about this for a while. It's the reason there were some rate increases last fall, is to cover these much needed upgrades and repairs. We also just had the first reading of a 12% water rate increase, and it's, again, we're behind on repairs for water lines. We have a lot of cracked water lines all over town, and the water tower, one of the water towers, needs painting and just basic upgrades and upkeep like that. So,
as John Revelinsky pointed out, that's 12% of
about a third.
Yeah, a third of your bill. It's not the whole bill, because they're broken into different things. So
yeah, because you pay about a third your water, a third your wastewater, and then there's trash recycling. That's, people call it the water bill because it comes from the water department. Mm-hmm. It really should be called the utility bill because it's multiple things. We rezoning 200 East Briggs from B1 to R3. It was used as a business. Now they want to use it as multi-residence. We have no problem with that. It goes through planning and zoning first, and then they make a recommendation.
Okay.
Almost done. The tree amendment, the tree ordinance is passed finally. So we have more tree protection. Yes. And so it's a good thing for our urban trees. And I'll talk more about our urban tree plan now that this is passed.
Urban trees, I think of them wearing little berets or something. But also, I just want to say, Kevin Flanagan tendering.
Yep,
that was next. Go ahead. Sorry.
So we finally we approved a separation agreement. So our city administrator has resigned, and the council has accepted his resignation. And his last day is Friday, April 18th. So we'll be on the search for a new administrator soon. I'll probably have something to report on that at our next.
Kevin read a very sweet letter about how much he was embraced here by the community with his family and so forth. A good man. But
last thing is the Public Safety and Transportation Committee.
Last but not least.
Yep. Unanimously approved all of the requests from Fairfest in terms of street closures, in terms of being allowed to play music a little later than usual, and in terms of a beer garden. So everyone was big thumbs up and very supportive.
Well, I think except for Mr. Revelinsky.
Oh, okay, that's right. Everyone except for one person.
Who told me he wanted to, but just couldn't because that's his principle.
Yeah, that's good.
But yeah, we do appreciate that. It was a long night, and I've been speaking with New Belgium and some other people. Looks like going forward might be some very interesting things. Fairfest, you don't want to miss it. Is that TV? Am I doing that for TV? You can't see on radio. I'm throwing the Fairfest logo right up in front of the camera. I'm probably off kilter, but at any rate, we're out of time. Michael, thank you. We've been talking with Michael Halley, 4th Ward City Councilman, giving us the latest on City Haps. Again, you can hear this Thursday at 6:30 p.m., following Monday at 6:30 a.m. Thank you so much. We'll cue up the music and wish you all a very, very nice day here in the neighborhood. We'll see you. Keep it tuned right here.